I'm Marlene Bennett. I'm 57. And until that exact moment in the living room, I honestly believed I was invisible to my own family. The realtor had barely finished describing the vaulted ceiling when my daughter Emma chuckled under her breath and said, "Oh, don't mind her. She's just here for vibes." Like I was a tourist in my own life. Like my presence needed a reason. I didn't say a word. I stood near the corner, next to a dusty side table with a chipped ceramic lamp I remembered from my sister Susan's younger years. I had been quiet the entire tour, nodding politely as Claire, the realtor, pointed out the house's potential, while AJ, my husband of nearly 40 years, made sure to do all the talking, cutting in every time Claire asked a question. Before I tell you how this twisted inheritance mess exploded, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if your family's ever made you feel invisible. Because what the realtor said next didn't just stun my husband. It blew the whole lie wide open. "We're just looking to get it off our hands." He kept saying, like it was trash. He was too tired to haul to the curb. Emma and her husband Joel trailed behind, half listening, half texting, while Claire kept side-eyeing me in a way that felt different. Not judgmental, not mocking. Curious, maybe, or confused. And then she paused mid-step, right between the hallway and the old formal dining room, narrowed her eyes slightly, and asked, "Wait, sorry, I just want to double-check something. Marlene, you're the owner, right?" Was like someone dropped a brick in the middle of the room. Joel's phone slipped out of his hand and hit the floor. Emma stiffened, like someone had slapped her. And Ajahi didn't say anything. He just turned slowly toward me like his jaw was wired shut. I blinked, swallowed, and said nothing because I didn't understand what she was asking. "I thought we were selling Susan's house." Claire nodded slowly, almost to herself, then glanced at her clipboard, back at me, and said, "That's strange. Never mind, we'll talk later." Her voice was calm, but her eyes told me not to drop this. My heart was pounding in my ears, and I didn't know why. I followed them through the rest of the tour like a ghost, noticing things I hadn't paid attention to before the window seat in the guest bedroom that Susan used to read in, the crack in the plaster where we'd hung her mirror after her divorce, the faint smell of her lavender oil still soaked into the closet doors. After they all stepped outside to talk pricing, I lingered back, pretending to tie my shoelace. Claire brushed past me on the porch steps, gently slipped her business card into my coat pocket, and whispered so quietly I barely caught it, "Ask me later." Alone. Then she smiled and walked off like she hadn't just dropped a grenade in my lap. Emma was already complaining about the dumb realtor. AJ was on the phone with Joel about getting a second opinion, and I stood in the gravel driveway, one hand in my pocket, clutching that card like it might set itself on fire. I didn't know what was going on, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like someone was finally talking to me, not about me. And that scared me more than I could explain. The card burned a hole in my coat pocket the whole ride home. AJ drove, ranting about Claire being too nosy and how we needed a more professional realtor, someone who knew how to keep their mouth shut and just take a commission. Emma chimed in about how Claire had a weird vibe, and Joel was already pulling up a competitor's website on his phone in the back seat, trying to get a quote for a faster listing. I didn't say a word. I just sat there, gripping the edge of my seat, heart racing like I'd stolen something. The moment we got home, AJ grabbed a beer and sank into his recliner like nothing had happened. I went straight to our bedroom, shut the door, and pulled Claire's card from my pocket. Her handwriting was neat, in blue pen. "Call me after 8. Private line." I stared at it for a few minutes, trying to breathe through the anxiety flooding my chest. At 8:02, I finally called. Claire picked up after the second ring like she'd been waiting. Her voice was soft, but direct. "Marlene, I didn't want to say anything earlier because of your family, but I pulled the property records for Susan's house before the showing. You're listed as the sole inheritor. There's no mention of AJ, no joint ownership, a transfer of title. Your sister left that house to you and you only." I sat down on the edge of the bed. "No, that can't be right," I said, more to myself than her. "AJ told me it was going through probate, that it had to be split." "What?" Susan's lawyer said. Claire paused. "Do you remember the name of the lawyer?" I'd never spoken to anyone directly. AJ handled everything. Claire offered to email me the full document file in the morning. I hung up and just sat there, staring at the wall. I kept thinking back to when Susan was in hospice. I was with her almost every day for 3 months. I read to her, helped her eat, changed her sheets. AJ only came once. Emma stopped by twice. Joel never showed. But Susan and I had a bond, she always said. I deserved more. And now I couldn't stop wondering what she really left behind. The next morning, Claire's email hit my inbox at 7:46 a.m. Opened it with shaking hands. There it was clear as day, Susan's last will and testament, naming me Marlene Grace Bennett as the sole heir to 312 Everwood Lane. No mention of AJ, no mention of Emma or anyone else. It was notarized, signed, and legally filed 2 weeks. Before Suzanne passed, stared at the screen like it was written in another language. My mind raced back to a Jay's voice the week after Susan died. We'll just get the house sold quick. Don't stress yourself with paperwork. I hadn't questioned him, not once. I went downstairs and found a Jay in the kitchen, halfway through buttering toast. I watched him for a moment, calm, ordinary, like he hadn't buried the truth under casual lies. He looked up and said, "You sleep okay?" I lied. "Yeah, fine." But something shifted in me. I stopped waiting for permission to exist. I started paying attention. That afternoon, while AJ was napping and Emma was off running errands, I snuck into Susan's old room in the house and opened the bottom drawer of her dresser. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, just following instinct. Beneath a stack of dusty scarves, I found a small manila envelope sealed, with my name scribbled on it in Susan's handwriting. My stomach dropped. My hands shook as I peeled it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a tiny silver key taped to the corner. The note read, "Mar, if they're reading this with you, gone. I've failed. But if you're holding this, trust me, you'll look behind the linen paneling in the hallway closet. The truth is in there. And for God's sake, don't trust AJ with it." I stared at that note for a full minute, the words soaking in like poison and oxygen all at once. My entire body felt like it was buzzing. I folded the letter carefully, slipped the key into my bra, and stood there thinking about all the times I'd told myself I was just being paranoid, just overthinking. But now, it was starting to look like I hadn't been overthinking enough. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying Susan's note over and over in my head, trying to figure out if it was real or just the ramblings of someone slipping away. But Susan wasn't dramatic. She never wasted words. She said the truth. Was behind the linen paneling? Then that's exactly where it would be. The next morning, I packed a few towels and cleaning supplies into a tote bag and told AJ I needed to do a deep clean before any real showings. He grunted from behind his newspaper and told me not to break anything. Emma offered to come help, but I said I needed to be alone with Susan's memory. That line usually made people back off. The house was quiet when I stepped inside. Still, like it was waiting for me. I moved quickly down the hallway to the linen closet third door on the left. The one with the slightly warped hinge and opened it, heart pounding. The shelves were stacked with old blankets, a few of Susan's throw pillows, and some boxes labeled Christmas and taxes. I removed everything carefully, set it all on the floor, and ran my hand along the back panel. It felt slightly loose. My fingers found a small gap near the bottom, and when I pulled, the whole back shifted forward with a soft pop. I held my breath. Behind the panel was a small hollow cavity, and inside was a metal box about the size of a shoebox with a tiny keyhole on the front. I pulled it out, sat cross-legged right there on the hallway floor, and took the key from my bra. It clicked. On the first try, inside were 3 items: an old property map, a bundle of sealed envelopes tied with green ribbon, and a tiny black journal with Susan's name embossed on the cover. My hands trembled as I opened the journal. Her handwriting was small, tidy, and every page was filled. She had been tracking something dates names. Phrases like Joel asked for access again, and AJ mentioned the zoning issue he knows. More than he says, there was an entry dated just 3 months before her death that read, "Told Marlene to trust no one." Jay's been visiting with that same notary Dana something. Something's wrong. I read the line 5 times. A cold. Sweat formed at the back of my neck. I put everything back in the box and locked it. I didn't know what to do next. I needed help, but not from anyone in my family. As I stepped outside to get some air, Claire's car pulled up to the curb like she'd been waiting. She stepped out in jeans and a jacket. No clipboard, no pretense. "I had a gut feeling you'd be here," she said, walking up slowly. "You okay?" I nodded but didn't speak. She studied my face and then glanced down at the box I was still holding. "That looks important." I hesitated, then handed it to her. Susan left it. She said not to trust AJ. Claire didn't look shocked. Instead, she exhaled like she'd been bracing for it. She walked me inside and we spread everything out on the kitchen table. She examined the property map, then pulled out her phone and started searching the parcel number. "This house sits on a zoning line," she said quietly. "Part of it overlaps with a commercial lot that was redrawn in 1991. It's a legal tangle. But if Susan knew about it and AJ found out," she trailed off. I could see the wheels turning. "What does that mean?" I asked. Claire turned the map toward me. "If this map's accurate and you inherited the full lot, then there's more than just a house here. There's leverage. Maybe a lot of money." My breath caught in my throat. The door slammed behind us suddenly, making both of us jump. AJ's voice came down the hallway like a crack of thunder. "What the hell is this?" He stormed into the kitchen, eyes darting between the box, the map, and Claire. "You went through her things without telling me." I stood up fast, heart racing. "I didn't know I needed your permission." He stepped forward, trying to grab the box, but Claire put her hand on it. "Don't," she said firmly. "This belongs to Marlene." AJ glared at her, then looked at me. "We're going to talk about this at home." And just like that, the room felt smaller, tighter. I didn't move. I just stared at him and realized something that hit harder than anything I'd read in. That Journal AJ hadn't just lied to me. He'd planned something. I'd been too tired, too trusting, and too small to stop it. Until now. That night, AJ didn't speak to me. Not a word. He slammed cabinets louder than necessary, left his dinner half-eaten, and stomped around the house like a teenager having a tantrum. I stayed quiet, watching him from the hallway like I was observing a stranger, not the man I'd shared a bed with for nearly 4 decades. My mind was still spinning from everything Claire had uncovered, from Susan's journal entries to the zoning map and the cryptic notes about AJ's visits with a woman named Dana. I couldn't sleep, so I waited until AJ started snoring in the bedroom, then grabbed my keys and drove back to Susan's house. The air inside smelled like old dust and lavender, a scent I was beginning to associate with secrets. I didn't turn on any lights. I didn't need to. I walked straight to the hallway where the panel had been, crouched down and pulled the box out again just to be sure I hadn't imagined it all. It was real. It's every line in Susan's handwriting, every folded page, every time-stamped journal entry. It all confirmed what my gut had suspected for months. AJ wasn't just keeping me in the dark. He was actively trying to steal what wasn't his. I took a breath, trying to calm the shaking in my hands, and stared at the map again. Susan had marked a red X just off the laundry room on what looked like an extension of the original blueprints. It didn't make sense. There was no door, no crawl space listed in the current plans. But something about it made me feel like she was pointing me somewhere deliberately hidden. I grabbed a flashlight from the garage and went to the laundry room. The walls were thin drywall, the paint slightly bubbled from age. I knocked lightly, section by section, until one part near the floor gave a dull, hollow thud. I pressed my ear against it. Nothing. Then I noticed a seam-a-thin vertical line like an old repair that hadn't been sanded properly. I ran my fingers along it, heart pounding, and found the edge of a removable panel. With the claw of a hammer, I gently pried it loose. The panel popped free with a faint creak, and behind it was a dark opening, no bigger than a suitcase, leading to a crawl space that ran under the house. I shined my flashlight inside and saw dust, insulation, and just a few feet in a stack of old wooden crates. My hands were already filthy, but I didn't care. I dropped to my knees and crawled in, ignoring the scratch of fiberglass and the sharp edge of a nail that scraped my arm. The crates were covered in grime and cobwebs. I opened the first one and nearly gasped. Inside were dozens of sealed envelopes, some with bank names I didn't recognize, others marked with stock holdings private, Whittington, 1968, and one that simply read, "Save this, Marlene." The second crate held old ledgers, carefully preserved in plastic, and one thick manila envelope containing a series of property documents and receipts. My heart thudded as I read through them. It looked like Susan had been quietly collecting the remnants of our great-uncles. Estata J had always said, "died broke." But here it was, clear as day pouts, dividends, oil shares, even a few war bond receipts. I sat there in the crawl space for almost an hour, reading until my fingers were numb. When I finally emerged, covered in dirt and dust, I heard the sharp click of the front door unlocking. I froze. It was almost 2 a.m. I crept toward the front hallway, pressing myself against the wall. The door creaked open, and I saw a figure step inside slowly, a flashlight beam sweeping the room. My breath caught in my throat. The person moved quietly, but not like someone unfamiliar with the house. It was someone who knew exactly where to go. They didn't call out. They didn't hesitate. I watched from the hallway as they headed straight toward the laundry room. My blood went cold. I stepped back into the crawl space, tucked everything into the crates, and pressed myself flat against the wall, heart slamming in my chest. The figure entered the room, paused, then turned and left, like they'd sensed they weren't alone. I waited until I heard the door close and the soft crunch of gravel outside. I didn't move for another 15 minutes. I finally stood and locked the panel back in place. I realized I wasn't just in the middle of a family lie, was sitting on a fortune someone else had already decided didn't belong to me. I didn't go home that night. I sat in the car outside Susan's house, windows cracked, watching every car that passed like it might double back. My hands were still dirty. My sweatshirt clung to me with dried sweat and fiberglass dust, and the box of documents was locked in the trunk beneath an old picnic blanket. By 8 a.m., we met at her office, a small converted garage behind a cafe near downtown. She made coffee without asking, and we laid everything out on a long wooden table, careful not to crease or tear anything. A real estate historian named Mark showed up 30 minutes later, thick glasses and a no-nonsense tone. He took one look at the zoning map and started nodding like he was seeing something he'd only heard about. "If this is accurate," he said, pointing to the red-lined overlay Susan had drawn, "then this house overlaps with the original Whittington farm plots. Those were seized for development in the 80s. I didn't fully understand the legal part, but I understood the look in his eyes. It meant money. Claire turned to me gently and said, "Marlene, this might be worth a hell of a lot more than you think. But if anyone else finds out before it's legally secured, they'll come for it fast." I thought about the figure in the house, the flashlight beam, the way they moved like they belonged. "Someone already is," I said. Claire frowned, pulled out her phone and made 2 calls, one to her lawyer, another to have the house's locks changed immediately. That night, I drove back to our place and tried to act normal, but it didn't last. AJ was in the garage, music playing too loud, the smell of beer thick in the air. I waited 5 minutes, then slipped into the garage and opened that drawer. Inside were shredded pieces of paper, one of which had the heading "Amended Will, July 2022, and the notary name Dana G. Wilcox. My stomach twisted. I took a photo of every piece I could find, then left it exactly how I'd found it. AJ didn't even notice. The next day, Claire called with worse news. "Joel's been asking around," she said. "He contacted one of the developers who've been eyeing that area for years. Sent him a copy of Susan's parcel number and mentioned a family inheritance under review." I nearly dropped the phone. Joel had always been slick, always hiding his intentions behind charm and tech talk. But now I realized he wasn't just helping a J. He was working angles for himself. I asked Claire what to do. She said one word: document everything. Fast. I spent the next 2 days scanning every paper, photographing the boxes, recording a video of the crawl space. and emailing copies to a private folder Claire helped me create. I bought a burner phone and texted her only through that. I even told Emma I had the flu, so she wouldn't come snooping. On the third night, I heard it again, someone at Susan's house. This time, I stayed outside, hidden behind the bushes near the back patio. I watched a man climb through the kitchen window and unlock the side door. I recognized him immediately, Joel. He wasn't even subtle. He walked in with a flashlight and a large duffel bag, like he was expecting to take something. I recorded the whole thing, hands trembling. He came out 30 minutes later, empty-handed but clearly pissed. I sent the video to Claire the moment I got home. She'd called me at 1 a.m. "We need to escalate," she said. "But we do it smart. You're going to get power of sale first, quietly. Then we box them in, every last one of them." And for the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt ready. Ready to stop surviving and finally take back what was mine. I followed Claire's instructions to the letter. We scheduled a private meeting with her lawyer, a woman named Janine who specialized in property fraud cases, and within 48 hours I signed papers that gave me full legal control over Susan's estate and the house itself. No one else could sell, transfer, or touch it without my signature. Claire called it locking the vault before they even find the key, and it felt like the first real armor I'd ever worn. But the second betrayal hit me before I had time to breathe. I had just left Janine's office when Claire called, her voice clipped and fast. "I tailed Emma," she said, "and I think you need to see this for yourself." I met her at a quiet parking lot behind a strip mall where Claire's car was facing a small notary office. We sat in silence for about 5 minutes until Emma's SUV pulled in. She stepped out in heels and a blazer, hair pinned back like she was heading to court, and walked quickly toward the office. A few seconds later, a woman in a gray coat stepped out to meet her, tall, blonde, maybe late 40s. Claire whispered, "That's Dana." "Dana Wilcox." I stared, heart thudding. "AJ's notary." They spoke for 10 minutes outside, and I watched Dana hand Emma a thick manila envelope and a blue folder. Claire filmed the whole thing through her windshield. I couldn't hear what was said, but Emma hugged her before they left, which told me more than I needed to know. That night back home, I played it cool. I made dinner. I smiled when Emma dropped by, pretending to check in on me with her usual fake warmth. I nodded and asked her if she was still doing notary work with Joel's contacts, just to see her reaction. I almost laughed out loud, but I didn't. I just smiled and told her I was proud of her. Then I excused myself to the bathroom, locked the door, and cried silently for 5 full minutes. Not just because she lied, but because she looked so comfortable doing it. They've already drawn up a fake deed. They just need your forged signature. But if we intercept it, if we record them trying to use it, we can bury them. I agreed, but I wanted proof first. Real proof. Something they couldn't explain away. Claire pulled strings and got one of Dana's assistant paralegals to talk under the table. No names, no recordings. Just details. What we found out sickened me. AJ had been visiting Dana monthly for over a year, long before Susan even died. He'd asked for fake transfers, forged addendums, and even tried to set up a secondary will naming Emma and Joel as alternate beneficiaries. And it wasn't just fraud, it was premeditated theft. That afternoon, Dana accidentally called my burner phone, mistaking it for a Jay's number. I answered, silent, and she launched into her message. "Hi, it's ready. The forged deed and POA are done. Just make sure the old lady signs without reading it. We'll file before end of week." She hung up before I could even process it. I played the message for Claire 3 times. Her jaw clenched tighter with every word. "This is it," she said. "They've crossed into felony territory. And now we burn it all down." I sat there, exhausted and wired at the same time, realizing that my husband and daughter had spent over a year conspiring to strip me of everything my sister left me in. The only reason they hadn't succeeded yet was because I stayed quiet long enough to catch them in the act. But that silence was done. I wasn't going to just survive this. I was going to win. Claire was right. It was time to flip the game. I'd spent so many years second-guessing myself, silencing my own gut instincts, brushing off every uneasy feeling with a, maybe I'm overreacting, but hearing Dana's voice on that message, changed something permanent inside me. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't crazy. I was a target. And I wasn't going to be quiet about it anymore. The next morning, I called Janine and scheduled another meeting, this time to officially register a fraud report and freeze any possible attempts to transfer the property. I brought every piece of documentation, the journal, the maps, the photo of the shredded will in a Jay's drawer, even the audio file of Dana's accidental voicemail. Janine didn't flinch. She'd seen worse, but she didn't sugarcoat it either. "They're not going to back off," she said, tapping her pen. "They're too far in. They'll push harder, maybe even try to intimidate you. But you've got leverage now. Keep everything documented and stay ahead of them." I nodded and left, feeling strangely calm. That night, I stayed up, reviewing every video, every file, every screenshot, labeling them, backing them up, even printing hard copies to stash in a safe Claire helped me rent. I kept one USB drive on me at all times, tucked into my bra like armor. When Emma called the next morning asking if I could meet her and Joel for brunch to catch up, I said yes without hesitating. Claire and I already had a plan. We chose a diner downtown with visible security cameras, lots of foot traffic, and a clear sight line for where Claire could sit nearby and record audio from her car. Emma arrived first, smiling too wide, carrying a folder disguised in a shopping bag. Joel came in 5 minutes later, greeted me like nothing had happened, and slid into the booth across from me. "We're really glad you came," he said. "We just want to clear the air." I sipped my coffee and let them talk, nodding when needed. Then Emma pulled out the folder and said, "Dad wanted us to help take care of the paperwork since you've been dealing with so much. Just routine stuff, no pressure, just sign at the bottom." My fingers tingled as I reached for the pen she offered. I opened the folder slowly and glanced at the top page. Power of attorney. Property transfer agreement. Notarized by Dana G. Wilcox. I looked up at them, smiled softly, and said, "Let me take this home and read it carefully. You know I'm not great with legal stuff." Emma hesitated for a second, then laughed nervously. "Sure, of course. Take your time." But Joel's eyes flashed something else: panic. Maybe desperation. I left the diner, walked straight to Claire's car, and handed her the folder. She scanned it, whistled low, and said, "They really thought you'd just scribble your name without blinking. It's unbelievable." We made copies, submitted them to Janine, and attached them to the ongoing fraud case. Then Claire leaned in, eyes sharp. "Now we bait them. Let's see what they do when they think they've won." We planned a fake submission of forged version of the same documents with obvious errors planted intentionally. I leaked it through an email from an anonymous account, making it look like I'd been careless and accidentally scanned the wrong forms to Joel. Within hours, Claire got a ping. Joel forwarded the fake document to Dana with a note. "She's slipping. We're almost there." That was the moment Claire said we had them. "We give it one more push," she said. "But you need to be ready for fallout. If they sense they're cornered, they might go nuclear." I nodded. I was ready. I'd played small for so long, I almost forgot what it felt like to know something they didn't. And now, I held the truth like a blade. Everything was in motion now, and Claire said it perfectly when she told me, "This is where we pull the rug fast, loud, and all at once." We didn't have weeks to play with anymore. Once Joel forwarded that fake document and thought I was slipping, we knew they'd go for a final move soon. Maybe try to file the forged deed, or worse, try to manipulate a quick private sale. So Claire suggested we set up a fake open house, a staged event that looked real enough for AJ, Emma, and Joel to believe we were trying to sell the property behind their backs, giving them the perfect reason to storm in and confront us, which we needed them to do while the cameras were rolling. We spent 2 days prepping Susan's house, tidying it up just enough to look presentable but still worn enough to be believable. Claire printed fake listings and posted them in private Facebook groups using burner accounts. She even created a throwaway phone number to answer inquiries just to make the event feel legitimate. Then, the morning of the fake open house, Claire set up 2 hidden cameras, one in the living room, another pointed toward the kitchen table where the fake buyer contracts were laid out neatly beside my purse. I was standing in the hallway when I heard the door slam open so hard it rattled the frame. AJ's voice came first, loud and accusatory. Are you kidding me, Marlene? You're selling it without even telling your own family. Emma and Joel were right behind him, pretending to look shocked, like they hadn't been scheming for months. I played dumb, stepping into the living room with a confused expression. It's just a showing, nothing's been decided. But AJ wasn't having it. He stepped closer, practically shouting, "This isn't your decision to make. We've been trying to help you handle this properly, and you go behind our backs." Joel was pacing now, glancing at the paperwork on the table, probably trying to figure out how much of it was real. Emma just stood by the door, arms crossed, shaking her head like I'd betrayed her. That's when Claire walked in from the hallway, cool as ice, holding a clipboard like she was just doing her job. "I'm sorry, but unless you're on title or invited by the owner, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." AJ turned to her, ready to snap. "I am the husband. This is family business." Claire didn't blink. "Actually, legally, Marlene is the sole title holder. And as of last week, she is the only person authorized to make decisions regarding this property." Joel tried to speak, but Claire cut him off by pointing to the kitchen. "You've just attempted to enter a private home during a falsified transaction that's already under legal review. And before you even ask Kias, you're being recorded." AJ looked around like someone had just dumped a bucket of cold water over him. Joel's face went white. Emma's eyes darted toward the camera mounted above the fridge and then to me, like she'd only just realized the trap. I stepped forward, voice calm but firm. "You've spent the last year trying to erase me. You lied about Susan's will, shredded evidence, brought in a notary to forge my signature, and now you want to act like I'm the one being shady?" AJ exploded then, lunging toward the table to swipe the paperwork off, sending papers flying. "You think anyone's going to believe this? It's your word against ours." But it wasn't, because Claire reached into her bag and pulled out a laptop, opened a file, and hit play. Dana's voicemail filled the room, clear and damning. "Just make sure the old lady signs without reading it." Joel tried to grab the laptop, but Claire pulled it away. "If you touch anything else?" And I pressed send to 3 lawyers, to news outlets, and the fraud department. The room fell into silence. Heavy, panicked silence. Emma was pale. AJ was shaking. Joel looked ready to bolt. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. Claire had everything we needed. The evidence was ironclad. The footage was clean, and the trap had closed. They'd walked straight into it. And for the first time, I watched them scramble. Not me. I watched them lose control. I watched them panic, okay? And I stood there with my head high, knowing they had no idea what else I had waiting for them. The fallout was immediate, and it was ugly. AJ left the house in a blind rage, slamming the car door so hard it cracked the side mirror, while Joel stormed off down the street with Emma chasing after him, Whisper yelling for him to act normal, because people were watching. Claire didn't say anything until we heard their car pull away, and then she turned to me and said, "That footage plus the voicemail and the shredded will, you've got a rock-solid fraud case. We file it now, or we use it as leverage. Your call." I didn't even hesitate. File it. I was done playing chess with people who treated me like a pawn. Within 24 hours, Janine submitted everything to the state attorney, and the response came faster than expected. AJ was served first, right in the driveway of our home, while I watched from the front window. He tried to play dumb, asked the officer if it was some kind of mistake, but when he read the charges, fraudulent representation, attempt to falsify property transfer, coercion, it wiped the smug off his face like soap on glass. Joel and Emma weren't spared either. Joel was hit with accessory to fraud and unauthorized handling of legal documents, while Emma was named as a cooperating party with intent to deceive. Dana vanished, her office emptied out overnight, her phone disconnected, and Claire said she probably fled to another state before charges could land. I didn't care. I had what mattered, the truth and power of sale. I walked into the county office 3 days later with Janine on one side and Claire on the other, and signed the papers confirming that I, Marlene Grace Bennett, was the sole and rightful owner of 312 Everwood Lane and every inch of land tied To it, no one else had a claim. No loopholes. No hidden clauses. It was mine. As I held the final stamped copy of the deed, my hands didn't even shake. I thought I might cry or feel overwhelmed, but what I felt instead was quiet, like something inside me finally stopped screaming. On the way out, Claire asked me gently, "You still planning to sell?" I paused, thought about it, then shook my head. "No, I've got a better idea." The next few weeks were a blur of planning, zoning checks, paperwork, and calls with a nonprofit group Claire introduced me to. They helped women, specifically older women who'd been financially abused by family, abandoned in legal limbo, or bullied out of their homes. I donated part of the land for an office, converted Susan's house into a safe transitional space with room for 3 families at a time, and kept the front garden exactly as Susan left it, wild, overgrown, but full of life. When the ribbon cutting day came, I stood on the porch holding the same key Susan had left me taped to her letter. And I spoke in front of a crowd of mostly strangers, but I didn't feel alone. I told them the truth, not about the lies or the betrayal or the court filings, but about Susan, about how she always told me I was worth more than anyone ever let me believe, and how she left me the tools to finally see it. Claire stood beside me, smiling proud, and Janine shook my hand like I was a client and a friend. No one asked where AJ was, or Emma, or Joel. No one needed to. They weren't part of the story anymore. I was. And for the first time in my life, the pen was in my hand and the page was blank. 6 months later, I still walk through Susan's house like she's about to walk in from the kitchen with her mug of chamomile tea, humming to herself and wiping her hands on that same faded dish towel she always had tucked in her apron. But instead, it's quiet, peaceful, full of something that feels like forgiveness and purpose, not grief. The renovations are finished. Now the back bedrooms turned into private rooms for women starting over. The den converted into a warm common area with a soft couch and real books on the shelf. Not just decoration, and the kitchen has doubled in size thanks to a contractor who donated labor after his own mother shared her story during a planning meeting. I spend mornings making coffee and talking to whoever's staying with us that week. Last month, it was a woman named Leanne and her teenage daughter who'd escaped a financial hostage situation with her ex-husband in Tulsa. And this week, it's a nurse from Georgia who was tricked out of her inheritance by her brother, nearly identical to what AJ and Emma tried to do to me. And when she tells me her story over toast, I nod, not with pity, but with recognition, because I know that kind of betrayal sits deeper than most people ever understand. Claire still stops by, always bringing something: a tray of baked goods, a new set of flyers, a business card from someone who wants to donate office supplies or offer free legal services. And she never stays long, just enough to ask, "You good?" And I always say, "I am now." And we both know what that means without needing to say more. The garden is my favorite place now, overgrown on purpose, left a little wild like Susan would have wanted, filled with lavender, mint, rosemary, and a tangled vine of tomatoes that shouldn't be growing but somehow are. And I spend hours out there pulling weeds, hands in the dirt, letting the sun hit my back while I think about everything that happened, the lies, the manipulation, the fear. The moment I realized I wasn't crazy, I was just outnumbered by people who didn't want me to know the truth. I don't speak to AJ anymore. He took a plea deal and avoided prison, but lost his reputation and most of his savings in the settlement. Emma moved states and sends me hollow text messages every few weeks that say things like, "Hope you're doing okay," or "Just thinking of you." But I haven't replied in months because I'm not interested in apologies that come without accountability. Joel got disbarred last I heard, and Dana disappeared off the grid, which doesn't surprise me. People like that always run when the paper trail runs out. I used to think closure came from confrontation, but now I know it comes from reclaiming what's yours and building something stronger from the pieces they tried to break. On the wall in the entryway, above the old light switch, Susan never replaced, I framed the first page of her journal, the one with her neat handwriting that said, "Mar, if you're reading this, trust yourself." It reminds me daily that I'm not the woman who stood quietly in the corner while others talked over her. and made decisions around her like she was furniture. Because now when I walk through this house, when I open a door or wipe down a counter, or set out towels for someone starting over, I know exactly who owns it, not just on paper, okay, but in every fiber of its foundation. I used to think this house was a burden, a leftover piece of someone else's life. But it turns out it was the beginning of mine. And now when I hear someone knock on the door looking for a place to breathe, to regroup, to remember who they are, I open it wide, hand them the same silver key Susan left for me, and say, "Welcome home."